Anyway, the point is, this is a very odd thing. It's supernatural, for lack of a better word. I mean, it raises all sorts of philosophical type questions, about the nature of self, about the existence of a soul, am I me? Is Malkovich Malkovich? I had a piece of wood in my hand, Maxine. I don't have it anymore. Where is it? Did it disappear? How could that be? Is it still in Malkovich's head? I don't know. Do you see what a metaphysical can of worms this portal is? I don't see how I could go on living my life the way I've lived it before.
And we are back. Welcome to part 2 of our Being John Malkovich episode. But before we go into real talk, it's time for PP, our patron pitch. This is where we let our patrons know what they can expect on their exclusive patron feed. And we also let non-patrons know what they're missing out on. Alex, before we even start listing all the cool stuff on our Patreon, we have to dole out congratulations to 2 of our patrons. I'll have you know that our friends Katie and Oti are official Tomato Meter critics. They have joined the enemy.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's only a matter of time before we're actually quoting them here.
Yeah, we got people working on the inside now.
Dude, it's already paying off because I told them, hey, I want to know if you get to pick the quote that they put there, or if it's just some random person putting a quote. And no, apparently you get to pick. So anytime that we're given grief to a critic because their quote is particularly offensive or dumb, they pick that quote. They made that decision. So I feel better about that now. But as I said, I look forward to eventually reading a quote from Katie and Oti. And it's like, it is just like, they submitted their podcast. So what they do is for the quotes, they transcribe their podcast and then, they grab the quote from there. So really cool. Congratulations. Like you said, we have a man on the inside. We have a man and a woman on the inside. And that's very exciting. Now into Contrarian Supplements proper. Once again, we're going to start with the ground floor. If you are on the Travolti's level, Travolti's tier, as usual, you're going to get our cutting room floor stuff. Just last episode, we cut like 10 minutes at least of us talking about Glass Onion and Netflix and The Rock's
that was like 20 minutes long. Like that, we just went off, and I remember when I cropped it from the editing, and like I put it in a new file, it's like, holy shit, this was 20 minutes long.
I mean, there was a lot to talk about because we hadn't really, we spent 5 episodes talking about The Rock and John Cena. How could we not at least have a 20-minute conversation about The Rock and Black Adam?
And listening to it back though, like we have completely different it's just like we're sitting around like outside having a beer venting about the state of movies and shit. It's not like we don't have our podcaster voices on or anything. So if you want the curtain peeled back, that's where you go for it.
Yeah, that's what you'll get. You'll also get our bonus episode for this month on the movie The Negotiator, picked by Ben. Samuel L. Jackson, Christopher Plummer team up. I haven't seen it, you haven't seen it, but you said Paul Giamatti's in it, so it sounds like it'll be a good time. That should be closer to the end of the month when you get that on the feed. Now, if you are on the next tier up, Winonis, and upwards, you'll also get our pre-recording notes. You'll get our QVRs this month, picked by Brandon Curtis. Look, speaking of peeking behind the curtain, the Bo Collector episode and this Being John Malkovich episode have been recorded pretty close to each other. So much like in the last patron pitch, we still haven't settled on which QVRs we're doing, on which movies we're doing for the QVRs. Brandon sent us a list of 7 movies, and none of those are familiar to either of us. So we're doing a little bit sleuthing, some researching before we pick who's doing what. But out of those 7, we're going to pick 2 QVRs and also a patron exclusive for next month. So be patient. We'll announce it on the next episode. But that is coming. And of course, Contrarians After Hours. that's a spin-off show where we talk about other things that we're watching, listening to, playing, reading, thinking about. Alex, what are you bringing to Contrarians After Hours this time?
Julio, I watched a documentary on HBO Max that was so remarkably my shit. It was called Class Action Point.
Is that the one?
Excuse me, Clash Action Park. Action Point is also part of the discussion I'll be having, because Action Point was the Johnny Knoxville movie that came out a few years ago.
I was about to ask if it was related to that.
That was based on Action Park, which was like this unbelievable exercise in excess and fucking like just the coked out ridiculousness of the 80s. It's a documentary that's exclusive to HBO Max. Before we record our After Hours, Julio, if you get a spare 90 minutes, you should check it out. But it's not like the most well-made documentary, and I'll discuss that further. But I had knowledge of Action Park going into it, and like it didn't come close to covering just the lunacy that went on there. So I'm really excited to talk about that. And then, of course, the subsequent follow-up Johnny Knoxville movie. So that is what I am bringing to After Hours. What about yourself?
First of all, I'm going to tell you about the culmination of my J.M. DeMatteis journey. I had my call with him, and those of you who have been listening for the last few episodes, you know the story. Basically, I supported his Kickstarter for a bunch of new comics that he's creating, and the tier that I supported gave me a Zoom phone call with him, and that phone call happened this past Saturday. So I'm going to tell you all about it because it was a pretty cool experience. I had been building up to that, and it didn't disappoint. The guy was he's a very gracious author, and he allowed me to geek out for about 30 minutes.
Excellent.
He was very patient with me. So we'll talk about that. And also, I watched the movie Bros, written by Billy Eichner, directed by Nicholas Stoller. Infamously known now because Billy Eichner kind of went on a Twitter rant when the movie bombed, and it's a shame because the movie is better than I think the perception that a lot of people have now because of that. But anyway, I'll tell you about it.
When are these people going to learn? You just don't tweet. Like, if you reach a certain level of celebrity, just give it to a fucking like an intern to run. That's all you got to do, or just retweet like your favorite sports teams.
All right, so for After Hours, we're going to be talking about Class Action Park. Is that it?
Class Action Park and Action Point.
Action Point, which is the movie. And then the movie Bros and my Zoom phone call with J.M. DeMatteis. That will be on our feed, as well as all the other stuff we got. And we announced it in the last episode. By the time that this one drops, you should have gotten a message from us officially requesting you to pick a movie for the main feed. But yeah, all patrons that were patrons as of last episode get to pick a movie for this round for us to do. So if you haven't yet, go ahead and message us with your pick. If you are a patron that wasn't a tier that already was picking movies for the main feed, send us your pick for dual QVR. And if you don't know what that means, send us a message. We'll explain. But just so you know, we need to compile those so we can start building our schedule for 2023. Luckily, we have about a month to figure it out. But that's what's on our Patreon channel right now. If any of it sounds interesting, go and check it out. Patreon.com/Contrarian Prime. Look at the tiers. Join the Contrarian supplements and support the cause.
$1, $3, $5, and $10 are our respective tiers. Just head on over to our Patreon page. That's $1. You know, just link your PayPal account to it or some shit. $1 can't do much these days, but it can get you on the ground floor, and you can take a virtual stroll around our what we have to offer. And even going back to long ago, our first patron episode when we discussed at length one of my favorites, blue is the warmest color. And let us know what you think. See if there's something you'd like to see more of. Let us know. If there's something you think we're dedicating too many resources to, let us know as well. If you haven't already, you don't even have to be a wrestling fan. Check out the work we did encapsulating, recapping, and kind of just putting into perspective the Rock John Cena mega feud match and aftermath from 10 years ago. I was really proud of the work we did on that. And for our current patrons, and kind of like a tantalizing little, the Twinkie on the string or whatever, what have you.
It's supposed to be a carrot, but I like your updated version.
Who's going to pay for a carrot when you got a Twinkie right there, man? Currently piecing together another project for our patron page, patron exclusive. Now, I'd just say right now, it's not going to have the girth and depth of the Roxina, but we're looking at maybe 3 or 4 bonus episodes and an overarching story that we're looking to tell. So stay tuned. That will be in the not too distant future for our current patrons. And I know some of y'all are listening that aren't patrons right now that are, your ears perked up and the hairs on the back of your neck stood up just by the electricity we promised to bring. Oh, and I should clarify too, this in no way, shape, or form will have anything to do with wrestling or combat sports. This would be specifically in the realm of film. So that should do that.
That's not to say that at some point you won't bring another wrestling project.
No, not at all. That's almost a guarantee. But for now, our next patron exclusive project will be geared specifically towards the film industry. So to our current patrons, we love y'all so dearly. I like to say we're always taking applications for new ones, and we will welcome all of our new patrons with open arms. We will not build a tunnel that dives into their brain and takes over.
Mr. Malcolm, sir, with all due respect, I discovered that portal. I mean, it's my livelihood. Do you understand?
It's my head, Schwartz. It's my head.
We will not charge you $200 to spend 15 minutes in either Alex's mind or my mind. What better way to transition to real talk?
Then some real talk. I do have a dirty mind, but John Malkovich doesn't. It appears to be pretty clean because it takes other people to be in it to really have these intense sexual desires for him.
It's weird, but I guess, that's just the story they're telling, because the movie, so this is not just me misreading it or being very particular about the way I read it. Like, the movie sells Malkovich as a pretty milquetoast guy, right?
Yeah, and he said that he approached this just like any other movie, that it was like a fictional role. The only thing about his real life that was reflected in the film was the wardrobe. So I thought that was interesting.
It's funny because that's what Mark Zuckerberg says about the Social Network. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
He's like, they got everything wrong, but they got my wardrobe down to like the slippers that I was wearing.
At this point, I know Mark Zuckerberg lived through it, but he's such a fucking weirdo that I'm fine believing David Fincher's version of reality. David Fincher and Aaron Sorkin. Have you heard the thing that it was suggested by Malkovich and at least one other producer that they retool it as being Tom Cruise, and Tom Cruise was the lead?
Not being Tom Cruise. I didn't know Tom Cruise, but I know that so my original plan was to just go through all the supplements in the Criterion that I own, but I didn't get to it because it's been crazy. The one that I started and I didn't finish is a conversation between John Malkovich and John Hodgman, who's a comedian. He was in The Daily Show. He's kind of like, if you saw him, you would be like, oh, it's that guy. Anyway, it's like from 2011, so a decade removed from the movie, and they're just talking about Malkovich's participation in it. And yeah, he did mention Tom Cruise, but he said that when he first read the script, he wanted to direct it. But of course, he didn't want to be in it. So he just basically told Charlie Kaufman, hey, do you want to rewrite it, make it a different person, not John Malkovich, and then I'll direct it. And Kaufman was like, nope, this is the script, this is the story. And Malkovich said, okay, well, good luck, and walked away. And it wasn't until later that then he became involved in the project again.
My research didn't go too deep into this because, like I said, I'd only seen it once before, and I didn't want to read too much into it and kind of spoil anything for myself ahead of time. Like I said, I was kind of surprised at how much I retained from it. But yeah, this was written with John Malkovich in mind. I read it was because Kaufman thought John Malkovich was a funny name and that the word Malkovich was funny to say repeatedly. And he's such an eccentric and chilling. I was going to say effervescent, but he's not. He's just a really commanding presence, I think would be the way I would describe him, in a very unique way. He's not an actor you can say, oh, he's like this. And he was approached about the film several times and loved the script, but he and his production crew felt that another actor would fit the role better. Malkovich offered to help produce the film and aid Spike Jonze in any way, but refused to star in it. Eventually, after a couple of years, Malkovich's will wore down, and he agreed to star in the film. So this was a work in progress for several years, and we'll get to a little bit more of that in just a moment. But we are here with a 94%er. It's one of those that's high up on the list of films we've covered as far as the Rotten Tomatoes ranking, and also just it's where it's generally held amongst cinephiles. But there's 6% of those reviews on Rotten Tomatoes that beg to differ. What were they saying? What were you able to find, Julio?
All right. Rotten quotes now from the Rotten Tomatoes website. We're going to start with Kamal the Diva Larsul from Three Black Chicks Review. And she says, "It's not a horrible movie. It just gets so confusing that you should rent it so you can rewind and figure out what is going on." I think that I've never found it particularly confusing, but I can totally see how it could be. I think that if you disconnect from the movie for a few minutes, you get lost in your own thoughts, and then you come back to it and you're like, oh God, what's happening now? What did I miss?
God, imagine taking a piss during this movie, watching it in the theater.
Right?
Yeah.
You go right before Dr. Lester explains what's going on.
And that's like one of those, like, you would think that someone's playing like a trick on you, because you'd be in the theater and like looking around like, what? And everyone else is like nodding like they understand what's happening.
Yeah. Was this your experience though? Were you confused by the movie, or did you just let it take you on a ride and not worried about understanding it?
It was mostly the latter, just in the sense of like, when you said that at the end, I had forgotten that's what they said, so that's why he ended up in Emily's brain, and I was like, God, it's even more of a terrifying ending now that I fully understand it. But yeah, for the most part, it's kind of like Her. I'm not saying that Her is a movie that's on par with this in terms of like intricacy, but I think with films like this, you risk losing something if you don't just kind of like float. You're on the raft and you just kind of let it take you. I've only seen adaptation once, and I do not remember much of that, so I can't say that's for all Spike Jonze's movies. I do really like Where the Wild Things Are, but that's obviously kind of an outlier when compared to the other three. But yeah, based on this and the other things I've seen of Mr. Kaufman, you risk the movie lapping you if you get stuck on something and try to like figure it out. You know what I mean?
Yes, 100%. That's a good way to put it. If that was someone's experience, I would get it. I don't think in this case
I will not fault someone for that. Yeah,
exactly. It's only human to try to make sense of things.
That's what's difficult for me with talking about Synecdoche, New York, is like, when I've talked to people that really like it, that's what they try to pin on me of like, I get it. It just kind of went over. I'm like, no. I just really found it like boring, and at no point was I really invested in any of the characters.
I've seen it once. I've always meant to rewatch it because just from the brief things that you've said, I think that I like it more than you do. But I wouldn't claim to understand that movie. And I think that there's the potential for me to understand it a little better. And it's just, I think the problem is that it's so long. If it was shorter, I think it'd be easier for me to just tackle it again.
The thing, it's like right at or right under 2 hours. It's just like there's just so much going on.
It feels like 3 hours.
Yes. The Way of Water, I felt like I could watch that 3 times before I finished Synecdoche, but it is definitely one of those that people like when they try to explain like they get it. I'm like, fuck you. It's not a movie that's meant to be like understood. Like there's a lot of movies like that, but that's one that immediately comes to mind of when people try to lay it out. It's like, dog, this ain't Star Wars. Like, it's not supposed to be like this movie you can explain to somebody. You can't mansplain that film.
All right. Next quote, Stephen Farber from Movie Line says, "The filmmakers are stoned on weirdness for its own sake, which is the danger of becoming too enthralled by the free-willing ethos of the 60s. I don't know that he needed to specifically reference the 60s, I can see how this movie could be too weird for some people. I think that we were just talking about Synecdoche, New York, and you could make the argument that Charlie Kaufman, for better and for worse, became untethered once he stopped working with Spike Jonze. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
I don't think that Synecdoche is weird for its own sake, but it's definitely weirder than this. And so if Being John Malkovich, if you watched Being John Malkovich and you thought that this was too weird, man, I hope that you're avoiding the rest of Charlie Kaufman's output because it only gets weirder.
I still need to see Anomalisa. Anomalisa.
That's a short one too. I think it's like 90 minutes.
Yeah, and I remember it got all that hype because he got nominated for an Oscar, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Like not an Oscar, I mean like one of the big ones. Like I think I got nominated for Best Animated Feature. And then he had that movie on Netflix a few years back. I'm thinking of Ending Things, which I have you seen that?
Oh yeah. It's an experience.
Is it very obviously a Charlie Kaufman movie?
Oh yeah, but it is easier to follow than Synecdoche up to a point. And then it just, I think that by the time that things start like spiraling out of control, you are too invested in the movie. So at least that was my experience. It's like, it's too late for me to just throw up my hands in the air and give up. I was like, no, I need to just see it through.
I'm on the Wikipedia page and it has respected actor Oliver Platt credited as the voice, parenthetically, of the animated pig, and I'm just annoyed already.
It's better than that makes it sound. And it has the Plemons in one of the main roles.
Plem Dog Millionaire?
Yeah. Yes.
Toni Collette. I do love me some Toni Collette.
Anyway, yes. Charlie Kaufman writes movies that would be, when you compare them in the context of the mainstream, yes, they are weird. And Spike Jonze is also kind of an unusual filmmaker. So, next quote: Chuck Rudolph from Matinee Magazine says, "Loses momentum, tacking on countless plot twists that, while unpredictable, are tiresome and obnoxious."
That's the closest I've come to agreeing to one of these rotten reviews.
You think that there's one twist too many?
It really lost steam for me in the third act. Like I was having so much fun and laughing a lot, like real belly laughs and shit. And there's an incredible joke we didn't talk about in CC that we'll get to here in just a minute. But after the Malkovich scene, it really just unraveled for me. And I was just like, all right.
Oh, man, that early?
Yeah. Well, hold on. No.
I thought you were going to say after the flash forward, after 7 months later.
Oh, dude, that takes forever. No, it starts with the monkey flashback that I was just kind of like, okay. And it's now at no point did I think it was bad. It's just it was kind of like, you're rolling down a hill and then you kind of plateau and the journey's not over. You just kind of roll along a bit slower. So I didn't think it was bad, but I do think it lost some steam when I put in my Letterboxd review. It gets a bit too cute towards the third act.
I'm trying to remember which movie you said that about. Oh, it was I think it was Star Trek Into Darkness.
Yes.
That it was a little too cute with Star Trek references.
Well, okay. Hold on now. This is a better movie than Star Trek Into Darkness, but
Being Chris Pine. That would be the
I would pay
remake.
$200 for that.
Me too. Kid, there's no way that dude doesn't lead an exciting life 24/7.
You can be John Malkovich.
It's perfect. It's my second choice, but it's wonderful.
And one final quote. Christine James from Box Office Magazine says, "Descends disappointingly from hilarious whimsy into bleak, repellent, outer limits tinged dysfunction." That's the other thing that I can see people turning on. And maybe that happened to you. I know it happened to be the first time I watched it. Do you feel like it's too bleak at the end? Like we're all having fun and then it just ends in this horrifying fashion.
I can't tell you how I would have ended it. I think the movie deserves the absurdity of Cameron Diaz being the father to the baby, or however you want to word that. I thought that was perfect for the story that's told. But yeah, that's pretty rough, man. With the cues ending up in that little girl's head, and the look away. So I don't think the movie devolves into like this bleak story. It's just that last shot is haunting. It's the polar opposite of the final shot of District 9. The final shot of District 9 is like this movie that's really gross and sad and unfortunate. You get this beautiful, like, uplifting final shot. And in this movie, it's like this really bizarrely hilarious movie with this ludicrous plot, and then ends in the most disturbing way possible.
What I find more disturbing than Cusack's fate, because Cusack in the end, it's just like, well, he had it coming. But just the idea that Charlie Sheen and the new Malkovich and potentially Gary Sinise, they're all eventually going to invade this girl's mind. I mean, I guess she'll be a 44-year-old woman by then, but still, Yeah. It's I think that the movie's constructed in a way to where you don't really feel bad for Malkovich when it happens. It's just funny. But the idea that you're seeing this little girl that's like, I don't know, 6-7 years old when you see her at the end of the movie, and that that in her future, unless somebody prevents it, she's going to suffer the same fate that Malkovich suffered. That is, I think, really, bleak is the right word, because she's 100% an innocent at the time that we, leave the movie. I think that it's always a bother makes it sound like I turn on the movie, and I don't, but it's always left me on, like, I feel like we leave the movie on a really down note. And again, if that's where somebody says that that's where the movie lost them, I wouldn't argue with that. We're like, yeah, you were having a good time, and then at the end you were confronted with this terrible fate. That's true. That's accurate. That I get it. So you watched this once before. Do you remember how you felt about it the first time you watched it? other than feeling that it gave you cachet.
Yeah, I remember enjoying it. Like I said, it was thank you. It boosted my stature. It made me more respectable.
You could look down on the people that hadn't seen Being John Malkovich.
It's funny because it's kind of overshadowed by how much I did not care for Synecdoche, which we're talking about. And also, all right, first question for you and listeners, if you're first timers, you would consider Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind to be one of your favorite movies, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And you like it more than this?
Yes.
Okay. May need to watch it again. Never quite got it with Eternal Sunshine.
Oh, dude. Okay, hang on. Let me check the Rotten Tomatoes score, because that's a movie that I'm not going to just let you watch it and then tell me about it. This is a movie that we have to discuss.
92%, so yeah.
Okay, so hold off on watching it until we do it on the show, because that is...
damn.
Just putting my cards out there from the beginning. Spoiler alert for Real Talk of Eternal Sunshine, where we finally do it. Like, that's one of my favorite movies ever. And that's a 5-star. And of course, it stars Kate Winslet, so that's...
Yeah, I was about to say that the picture they use of her on the Wikipedia page for that movie, mod on. Shit, man. She is an elite hottie, about to cash even more royalty checks when Titanic gets re-released. God bless her. Can you imagine being in that movie? Like her and Leo and fucking Billy Zane, they just get like random checks, like when it airs on TNT and shit. It's just, god damn, man. The power of Jimmy Cam. All right, I brought that up because that's obviously a Charlie Kaufman film. And I'm trying to like set the stage here of like, he obviously has not an adaptation. I have a very loose recollection of. I need to revisit that. This is the closest I've come to being like just tickled with how like ridiculous his writing is. And yeah, I've only seen Eternal Sunshine one time, and if I'm going to rewatch it, it might as well be for this, because I remember underwhelmed is not the word, but I remember at the time just kind of being like, I don't think I feel the same way about this as everyone else does. But this is funny, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that's probably what makes it stand out from his writing credits is like all the other stuff I've seen of his is a little bit more bleak and cynical. And
I think he's gotten worse or like, bleaker. It feels, if you believe that his movies reflect how he feels about the world, then his worldview has gotten bleaker with every movie.
Well, I don't blame him necessarily for that, considering the past 8 years we've lived in. But so that's kind of where I am with Charlie Kaufman. And then Spike Jonze, already mentioned it. His 4 movies that he's made. I need to revisit adaptation, but I like this. I really like Where the Wild Things Are, and I thought Her was fantastic. And obviously, he's one of the big reasons we have Jackass, so I need to be eternally indebted to that man. But it's so cool to me that, like, this was both of their first big projects. And I use every other episode we do like, it used to be better, so I'll try to refrain from that. But that's, fucking Universal Pictures gave these 2 guys who was their first fucking movie $13 million. And John Cusack, Cameron Diaz, and John Malkovich. And they're like, have fun. That shit's awesome. And then also, just because I thought this was really fucking cool, and also like one of those things of, the stars aligning type thing. Charlie Kaufman sent the screenplay to Francis Ford Coppola. After he wrote it, Coppola liked it so much that he showed it to his daughter's husband, Spike Jonze. Jonze liked the screenplay so much that he approached Kaufman about directing the film. So, it's so funny that the intermediary was fucking Francis Ford Coppola. The guy who made The Godfather was like, hey, you should check this out.
On that interview that I was watching with Malkovich, I didn't have that connecting tissue. He just said that Coppola had called him after he had already read the script and, had that meeting with Kaufman where he tried to convince him to change the protagonist. They parted ways, and then months later he gets a call from Coppola who tells him, hey, you should come over and meet this Spike Jonze guy, because he says, someday we're all going to be working for him.
He's got this videotape of this Johnny Knoxville guy getting sprayed in the face with pepper
It's
spray.
hilarious.
It's so funny. We've been laughing at it for hours.
I think maybe you're onto something.
And 50 other lines to get into a girl's pants.
No.
No.
No. I was just talking about the film.
All right. So once you get over the novelty of that, and for white people, these are like 2 premier film contributors of the 21st century. So it's kind of, it's a big deal. This was their first movie and they did it together. It's a solid film. I said the budget was $13 million. It grossed a little bit over $32 million. Again, released on October 29th of 1999 at the 2000 Academy Awards. Spike Jonze was nominated for Best Director, Supporting Actress Catherine Keener, and Original Screenplay Charlie Kaufman. Julio, let's see. I do this every time. Can you tell me who won Best Director? So this would have been for the year of 1999.
Is it Sam Mendes?
You are 1 for 1, my friend.
The famed American Beauty year. That's Christopher Plummer's second Oscar?
I believe so. So Best Supporting Actress. Oh, this is a gimme. We just talked about this a few days ago. Who did Catherine Keener lose to? 1999.
Angelina Jolie for The Bone Collector.
It wasn't for The Bone Collector, but it was for Girl Interrupted. And then Best Original Screenplay, Being John Malkovich, and in a loaded field that year. Who did he lose to?
Oh, 99. Jesus. So with an original, they might have lost to Alan Ball for American Beauty.
Good work. 3 for 3 on that one. I mean, you got Angelina's movie wrong, but the intent was there. But yeah, screenplay category. You had American Beauty, Being John Malkovich, Magnolia, The Sixth Sense, and then Topsy Turvy, which I've never seen before. The British musical.
Magnolia should have won.
I was trying to think when I was watching this, because it immediately came to mind because they're both the same year. Which of these I like more? I probably like this a little bit more, but I know how you feel about Magnolia. And for our listeners, yes, that was the year that South Park got nominated for Best Original Song for Blame Canada. What a time to be alive.
Back when American cinema took chances.
Oh, man, you want to talk about that. Best visual effects. There were 3 nominees. The Matrix, The Phantom Menace, and Stuart Little. The Matrix, of course, taking it home. They dominated a lot of the technical awards. Deservedly so. All right. Being John Malkovich, very funny. My problems with it, and problems, I use that word very loosely, almost like in quotations, are just like by the end when they're explaining like the whole idea of the portal and everything, I almost just prefer that it's not explained. Mm-hmm. You know, in a movie, this kind of like wacky or whatever words you want to use to describe like just the ridiculousness of it, I almost just prefer it like that's the way it is, you know? You know, the scene where Cameron Diaz goes to Lester, like, you know, they've talked, but you don't really ever know what they say, that type of thing. But I'm not going to fault him for making it even more ridiculous, because that's obviously just the point of this movie, is just the absurdity of it all. But for me personally, like I said, it kind of lost a bit of its momentum. Now, when this movie's funny, it is fucking hilarious. And the thing I was talking about earlier, like, this is like a golden era Simpsons joke.
I'm curious to see which one you're referring to, because I laughed really hard throughout the entire movie. But
so there's a lot of just like reactions to like facial expressions and stuff that I think are funny. But the joke of, it's established like 20 minutes before it pays off that when Cameron Diaz is putting her bird into the cage, well, first of all, she has these pets and their neighbors like, shut the fuck up, and like banging on the wall and stuff. And when she puts the bird in the cage, the bird goes, help, he's locking me in a cage. And she's like, isn't that funny? And then later in the movie where he goes to where John Cusack snaps and he holds Cameron Diaz at gunpoint, he, you know, makes her get in this cage and she goes, help, he's forcing me into a cage. And no one reacts to it because it's just, that's the type of like dumb fucking humor that I live for. That is, you know, that's a Simpsons joke or something like that. That's really weird SNL skits and stuff that I live for. That's Wayne's World 2. That would be a joke in Wayne's World 2. That's in Wayne's World 2 where Wayne sees the people on the street stacking boxes of chickens and watermelons, and then there's these 2 guys that are walking across the street moving this giant pane of glass back and forth, and he just kind of looks at it all and he looks at the camera. He's like, you gotta wonder if this is going to pay off at some point in the movie. And that's exactly what this is, and it's just wonderful.
I mean, it's funny, but I was definitely not expecting you to bring that up as the high point in comedy.
I thought that was brilliant, but there was other stuff throughout the entire movie. The Gary Sinise line made me laugh, and like just the physical comedy of John Malkovich, like when his brain's like short circuiting. Yep.
When he's talking and it's not him, like the first time that Cusack makes him talk, or the first time that Cameron Diaz makes him talk, I think that's the first one, when he's like, I love you too.
The documentary on him as a puppeteer, like,
amazing.
That thing with Sean Penn is literally that scene in Zoolander where they're doing the documentary on Hansel and the way he's talking about like his career and like other people and his like role models and shit. But it's Sean Penn. It's like one of the best like actors of all time. And that thing of like, he said, you know, I'm ready to move into it, but I don't, you know, want to be seen as an imitator. But I think that eventually all of us will follow Malkovich and, you know, into puppetry.
Yep.
And it like the sincerity he delivers it with. It's, you know, that's the type of thing that you leave that in the wrong hands and it is stupid. That's the point. But you leave it in the wrong hands and it seems stupid. You put it in the hands of Sean Penn and he delivers that line and it's like, this is fucking elite comedy right here, man.
You asked me in Gutierrez Corner if I found the whole shtick with the secretary that can't hear, if I found it funny. And now that we're in real talk, I can tell you that I find it hilarious. I just love it. It's so dumb, but it just works so well that, you know, because it keeps getting worse and worse. Like what she misunderstands gets more and more ridiculous. And it's funny because John Cusack at some point gives up on trying to clear things up, but then he finds himself dragged into it again. I just love it. And the fact that Dr. Lester has this idea that he is the one that has a speech impediment. that conversation, all that is, I just find it very clever. It's just like the back and forth and the acting, and
they started
Cusack's
strong
reaction.
too. How she like mistakes Schwartz for Juarez. Like it's not even close. Like he's like, no, I'm Schwartz. I don't know what you're saying to me right now.
He goes into the interview, and Lester goes, "You're Mr. Juarez." He's like, "No, I'm Schwartz." Security.
He calls security.
Mr. Juarez?
Oh, yes?
Chest.
I said yes.
You suggest what? I'm sorry, I have no time for piddling suggestions from mumbling job applicants. Besides, Dr. Lester will see you now.
It's weird because, like I said, I've seen this movie a number of times, but I actually saw it in theaters when like in Peru. I was still living in Peru at the time, and I was working this production company. I was
Where is John Malkovich?
¿Dónde está Señor Malkovich? I was working at
Juan Malkovich.
Juan Malkovicho. I was working at this production company. I was on the writing staff for this soap opera, and it was like a big release, especially if you were into movies, and there was buzz. Like the buzz had made it to Peru, and so everybody watched it, and everybody was talking about it. There was this girl that was part of the writing staff that everybody thought like she was really cute, and I remember like my friend would be like, "Oh, you're working with," I don't remember her name, but she was like, "She's really cute," and I was like, "Oh, she's okay." And I remember having interactions with her when we were working together, and just me thinking, yeah, I mean, she's a cute girl, but she's not like I didn't understand the attention. And then I went to see Being John Malkovich with some friends, and coming out of the theater after the movie, we run into her. Like she was coming out, she'd been in the same theater as I was, the same auditorium, and she was there with her boyfriend, who was this like dude that was like twice my size and had like a massive beard. And so we saw each other and was like, hey, and she's like, "What'd you think?" And I just went like, it was all right. I mean, I don't think it's as good as everybody says. And she looked at me like kind of disappointed, kind of like in disbelief. And she's like, "Really?" Because I thought it was great. And I was like, "Yeah, well, what you gonna do?" And then, we parted ways. And then next time I just, I guess that's just how like your brain works sometimes. The combination of like having her be disappointed in my opinions, plus seeing her dating a dude that was like much better looking than me, like more put together. I don't know, that whole thing like messed with my head. And then next time I saw her, I was like, she is really pretty. and then I was like, maybe I should give this Being John Malkovich movie a shot. And next time I watched it, I actually liked it, a little more. But the first time I saw it, it was one of those things where I don't know if it was just that the hype had kind of like set me up to not like it, or if it was just that I was too young to really appreciate how funny it is while being really dark. I just remember mostly having trouble engaging because a little bit like what we're playing with in Contrarian's Corner, the Catherine Keener and John Cusack are such despicable people that I was just like, we got to the end and I was just not happy about how it all turned out. And then subsequent watches have made me not just appreciate the humor better, but also just, I don't care that they're bad people. I just want a good story, and it's a good story. The twists and turns, like I don't care about the fairness, because I don't think that the movie is ever telling me that they're good people or that their behavior is excused. It's just showing you these fucked up individuals that make really bad choices. And, well, you can choose to believe that Catherine Keener is a better person by the end of the movie, or you can choose to believe that she's not, but whatever the case, it looks like Cameron Diaz is happy and they've reached some sort of balance there. And that's like, well, that's just how it is, Mm-hmm. And so this is probably, I don't know, the fifth time I've seen the movie. I really, my experience watching it now versus that first time has changed. I'm so much more positive. And the things that I think could be pointed out as flaws or things that don't quite work are overpowered by everything that works. So all the little things that don't make sense, maybe it's just because the movie's so silly that it's just very easy to just shrug them off. And I was like, what you were saying is like the idea that Catherine Keener knows that it's Cameron Diaz's kid, or that Catherine Keener is just making that up and Cameron Diaz believes it. I mean, it's just one of those but of course moments, you know, in this movie. That's what would happen, and you just don't question it, you just keep going along. I like it a lot. I think I like it more than you do. Her would still be my top Spike Jonze movie.
Yeah.
But an adaptation is definitely my least. It's the only Spike Jonze movie I don't like. I think he kind of like loses the thread in that one. Where the Wild Things Are is good, but I would put this one above that. I like it a lot. And I generally like Charlie Kaufman's work. Like the rest of Kaufman's work, I've seen Anomalisa, and I saw the Netflix movie, and of course Synecdoche the Key.
His writing credits are this, Human Nature.
Oh, it is him. Michael, directed by Michel Gondry. But yeah, Human Nature, I've seen it. It's it has the lizard in it. He's one of the main characters.
Confessions of a Dangerous Mind.
Directed by George Clooney, right?
The Clunes, yeah.
Yeah. You can tell the really weird, like almost unapproachable ones are the ones that are written and directed by Charlie Kaufman. You know, like Synecdoche, Anomalisa, and this Netflix movie. And then he's written some really weird shit that gets filtered through other people's sensibilities. Because, yeah, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind is kind of like a weird movie, but it's also, I want to say, it's probably his most traditional out of them. And that's because, yeah, I could see how George Clooney took that script and, you know, he shot it the George Clooney way. Versus, like, Michel Gondry is kind of like a weirder guy, so he could bring his own weirdness to Human Nature and Eternal Sunshine, the same way that Spike Jonze brings his own weirdness to Being John Malkovich and adaptation. It's really cool, like, to see how those talents, you know, can be combined to create something that's unique just because of the two people that are working on it. I guess I'm more of a Spike Jonze fan than a Charlie Kaufman fan, but I can appreciate them as unique talents, and I cannot wait for them to make an MCU movie, Alex. I know that's what you're waiting for.
You sicken me.
No, I seriously, I like that they bring such unique perspective to movies, you know? And I know Kaufman has had a harder time getting movies made than Jonze, at least from, you know, what I gather. I know I've read a couple Kaufman interviews that I think it was like maybe after Anomalisa or maybe before this new one, where he was just talking about how hard it is to get to finance his movies. But it's like, yeah, you watch his movies and it's like, of course. I appreciate them, but I also see how they're not like real money makers, you know, because you're not making them for the masses. I think Being John Malkovich, you know, kind of like strikes that middle line.
I would agree with that. And yeah, you can't do this shit every time. Not everything can be this. You need a variety, but I do enjoy movies like this every once in a while. I was just aghast to find out that Where the Wild Things Are, it cost $100 million. Paul Dano ain't cheap, man.
Gandolfini getting that Sopranos rate.
That's right.
And I would like to redirect my career so that from now on the name John Malkovich will be synonymous with puppets.
Sure, no problemo. Poof, you're a puppeteer. Just let me make a couple calls.
This is not those other movies we've kind of listed so far. I could see John and Jane Q. Public being, and by that I'm like immediately thinking of my parents. Like, they might have an easier time with this than Her. Just because Her has stuff that, you know, is kind of funny to us, but nothing is outright goofy as some of the shit that happens in this, unless I'm forgetting something from Her. But there are just like legit like pratfalls and shit in this that are funny.
I mean, it's true. Her is just, it's more heartfelt though. And that's the thing that it
is, but it's like, I don't find anything really in this movie to be off-putting. Like, there's really, aside from like Catherine Keener's character being like a sack of shit in the ending, like there's not like a doom and gloom about this that there is with Her if you actually start like thinking about the story of Her. You know what I mean?
But don't you think that the ending of Her is kind of uplifting? You know, it's just Joaquin and Amy Adams sitting there.
Oh yeah, I do for sure.
Yeah, so I think that would be like, yeah, I guess you go through like some bleak shit, but then at the end it's two humans reconnecting. So whereas like here, I know that the first couple times I watched it, my main critique was, you know, the way I rationalized why I didn't love it the way other people loved it. I would just say like it has no heart. You know, that's the consequence of you have your characters being pieces of shit. Yeah, it's funny and it's entertaining, it's very imaginative, but I can't connect. And then I think maybe the third time I watched it, I suddenly connected. It's that moment when Cameron Diaz falls from it. It's right after, you know, she's inside Malkovich and Catherine Keener is having sex with Malkovich, but she is in there. So it's the first time that Cameron Diaz's character is, in a way, having sex with a woman, and then she falls. And the camera is like on her face from above and then pulls back. And you can see she's transformed by the experience. And it's built up to that. I think that from the first time that she goes into Malkovich's head, you can see that her performance is giving you that it's a metamorphosis. She's just transformed to someone new and she's like really excited about what's happening. And I actually think it's a really good performance from her. And it just kind of builds up to that moment where like the camera pulls back from her and she's lying down on the ground and she has this big smile. That is a moment of joy that I can recognize and point to it and go like, that's the heart of the story. I mean, this woman that finds kind of her identity in a way. And we can talk about like where that goes, because I joked about it in Contreras Corner, and now in real talk I can say that it doesn't make me like the movie any less, but I do think that it's kind of I don't know if it's like a kind of like a timestamp, you know, kind of like a sign of when this was made, or what that they bring up a discussion about her sexual orientation, and then that doesn't become something that drives the movie necessarily going forward. You know what I mean? Today, that would be like, you would need a resolution to that story instead of just here. It's just kind of lays by the wayside. You know, it's just, at some point, it's not about Malkovich and having a penis. It's just about that. Mm-hmm. Why specifically I'm in love with Catherine Keener. And it just feels like it deserved more time the way after it's brought up, because it's such a complex subject matter. But anyway, I find that that's the heart of the story for me, because I don't care for Catherine Keener. I don't care for John Cusack. I don't even care about Malkovich. I think that they're all really funny, but they're just entertaining to watch. It's not like I connect to any of the problems that they're having. But I was thinking about this while I was watching it. Do you think, I guess I'll preface it by saying that I think Catherine Keener is great. Nails the performance, but she and Spike Jonze, I guess, they made a conscious decision of how to portray this character and make her really off-putting. Did you, at some point watching this, were wondering, okay, but what would it be like if we got either an actress that projects a different kind of energy that makes her a little more likable, or if Catherine Keener just kind of like turned on the charm and was a little more likable while still saying the same lines and doing the same things? You know, do you see how that would like maybe shift things in the movie?
Yeah, but then it just brings into question of like, I don't know how that would make it work, because I don't know if that's the story they want to tell.
Well, I think that the way it would work is that I would actually be invested. I would be more invested in that love story.
Yes, it would be nice to be happy for them ending up together in the end, instead of just kind of like, okay. That was one thing I was like completely unrelated to what we're talking about. I always think about that when I see that. I can't imagine how hard that would be. Marionette work. It's fucking crazy, dude.
Okay, so now that we're in real talk, it's beautiful to look at. I don't have to make fun of it. What he makes the marionettes do, I mean, it's a performance of its own. I really love the bit when they're in the Malkovich documentary, and he's teaching a class, and he's telling him, yeah, you're just making the puppet weep, but it has to be an extension of you. And
yes.
Then he grabs,
but you yourself are not weeping.
Yes, exactly. And then he makes the puppet weep, you know, and the puppet crumbles and starts like sobbing on the ground. And it looks great.
Yeah.
It's really cool. And I mean, of course, you don't get to see much of that ever.
Nope.
Team America. And I guess Anomalisa. I don't remember if Anomalisa is stop motion or if it's puppets.
I think it's I haven't seen it, but if I remember correctly, John Cusack actually took some marionette puppeteering lessons in order to prepare for the film. So there you go.
Now he has a party trick.
And then also the original script, it was Kevin Bacon, not Charlie Sheen, as Malkovich's actor friend, but it was John Malkovich himself who recommended Sheen for the part. You brought up something there that it's like, that's gone. Like seeing Charlie Sheen, be like, it's Charlie Sheen. It's just like, oh, it's Charlie Sheen, LOL. Like that's just like what it is now. And he was never fucking Robert Duvall or anything, but he was like a star of the moment, like a genuine bona fide superstar with no level of like E or strings attached, So it is kind of, honest to God, out of all the things in the movie, that might be the one that aged the poorest.
Yeah, but I think he's really good. I mean, he has 2 scenes, but I thought he was actually really funny.
Oh, yeah, he's fine. Yeah, he's fine, and he's really funny. Just the whole, oh, you're just stoned, that thing. Like, nothing against his performance. It's just like, the baggage sounds like a really dramatic word, but, just kind of the weight that comes along with Charlie Sheen now.
Well, yeah, that's, I was going to say, it's his own fault, but that seems unfair in a way because obviously I don't know him. I don't know what his mental health is like. I mean, but what we can say is that he had a very public meltdown and that just kind of like colors his career going forward. And so I guess that was my primary thought when I saw him. I was like, oh, he looks so healthy, and not just like in a, like he seemed like an actor that has shit together in his 2 scenes. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, oh, he got it. And I mean, I'm not like a Charlie Sheen connoisseur as far as like I've seen a lot of his movies, but I mean, I've seen The First Wall Street.
The weird thing is this Maxine likes to call me Lottie.
Ouch. That is hot. Maybe she's using you to channel some dead lesbian lover.
I guess putting just like a cap on that Charlie Sheen talk, he was in rehab when he heard about Spike Jonze's eagerness to cast him in this. And it was his directorial debut. Sheen accepted the role without initially reading the script. So it looked like
cool.
I mean, he's always had he's had a history of issues, but yeah, that is interesting. All right. I ended up giving this 3.5 stars on Letterboxd.
Jesus.
It's still gonna end up
being ready for that.
Dude, that's still going to end up being a B. Like, I also watched Reservoir Dogs today and gave that 4, so it's in the same category as that. I think some people just interpret things a little bit differently.
Same ballpark, it ain't even the same sport.
Tremendous. But that's why I prefer using letter grades, because there's so much like nuance between half stars and shit. So, yeah, I would definitely give this a B. Teetering towards B+. Like I said, it loses momentum for me, and just through the discussion we've had, I've come to realize how disturbing I find the ending of the movie. So that's not necessarily a knock on it, just to be clear. But I would go with a B on this. I saw your letterbox was 5 stars. You sticking with that whole 5, the full 5?
I am. Even though just rewatching and taking notes for Contrary Corner, I was able to poke holes that I wasn't even aware were there. Like there's 2 things that I wouldn't even say they bothered me, but that I noticed. Then I easily came to the realization that I didn't care that they were there because, like I said, I just find that the movie so entertaining that I just keep going forward. But one is that Cameron Diaz is not surprised when Maxine shows up to the date with John Malkovich the first time. You know what I mean? Like, so she's inside Malkovich's head when Catherine Keener or Maxine calls and they make the date, and she makes Malkovich, she forces him, influences him to say yes to the date, to go. But I don't think the movie makes it clear if, like, I thought that she was not aware that the person on the other end of the line was Maxine. You know what I mean? Like, I thought that she was just assuming that it was a fan. But then she teleports into Malkovich at the beginning of the date when Maxine shows up, and she's just like, oh, that's Maxine. And then she
yeah.
There's like a beat missing there where she would find out, so she's not surprised later. That's fine. And then what I brought up in the Contrarian's Corner, which is that there is no explanation as to how Dr. Lester found out that the rules of the tunnel. And again, I don't care, but it's definitely a missing piece. Something that doesn't make sense because it's such a complicated system. It's not like it came with a manual or that he could just like Google it and be like, how does this work? It's just, we just accept that he knows because he knows. So it's, I don't care. It's fine. I can make fun of it. I can poke holes, but at the end of the day, it's just so entertaining. And I don't think I made it clear enough. Like, I love Cameron Diaz's performance in the movie. I think everybody does great, but the way that she reacts to being John Malkovich and how that changes her life and how that drives her actions going forward. I mean, it's I really like it. And I think that's why I was thinking, man, it's a shame that I don't care more about her relationship with Maxine, because if I did, then it would be even more powerful. But even with that, it's still 5 stars because it's just so inventive. It's so wild. I think it was like Roger Ebert's review. I remember reading it, ages ago, where he was talking about how there is ideas for 7 or 8 movies in this movie. But Kaufman and Jonze just moved from one to the other almost seamlessly. It's great. And like I said, Her is my favorite of his. So Her is also 5 stars, but this one is just like right below it.
All right. Well, that was a fun and educational episode on Being John Malkovich. An interesting blind spot for us to tackle here. Not necessarily for either one of us, but just for Contrarian's Canon, as we say. So what is on deck next, Julio?
Coming up next, we're going to step away from the Mount Rushmore and its asterisk, and we're going to go back to the patrons because it's patron demand time. And our patron Ben Murray is giving us the movie Pretty Persuasion, which is an Evan Rachel Wood vehicle. And that's pretty much all I know about it. That and James Woods is in it, which, well, I don't know what James Woods we're getting here, but I guess we'll find out. I'm an Evan Rachel Wood fan, so I'm looking forward to watching it. She's one of those actresses that I really like, but I also haven't seen most of her movies. It's just one of those things. I think that it's my fault because she hasn't done a lot of mainstream stuff. I gotta get in my head that she's done a lot of like indie stuff because I always remember hearing about her movies but never seeing them play anywhere. So looking forward to this one. Do you know anything about Pretty Persuasion? Do you even know who Evan Rachel Wood is?
Yeah, she's in The Wrestler, dog.
Of course. Duh.
She's also in something else I really enjoy. I'm trying to remember what it is right now off the top of my head.
Across the Universe?
Ooh, Ron Livingston. No, not Across the Universe. She was in The Ides of March, but that's not what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, she was. She got pregnant.
I don't know. I'll have it in mind by the next time we meet.
All right. Pretty Persuasion. I don't know anything. Baccarat Blind, pretty much. So that's coming up next. And then after that, we'll return to the second half of Mount Rushmore, the other 2 heads.
All right. Well, that is what is on deck. Time to get on out of here. So we'll start off by giving thanks to the Festive Years who provide our opening and closing tracks. They kick us off with Last Stand, take us home with Summer of 99. Be sure to head over to thefestiveyears.com for any and all Festive Years needs.
Our friend and fellow podcaster Hans Rothiser is the man behind our logo and all the graphics on our webpage, our patron page, our merch page. Anywhere you see that little tomato looking at itself in the mirror or dressed up funny, that's just Hans doing his thing. And we're very thankful for it. If you want to reach out to him directly and tell him how much you enjoy his work, you can write to him on Twitter at Mildemonios, MILDEMONIOS, or you can email him, mildemonios@hotmail.com, or you can just check the rest of his work on his website, mildemonios.pe. He's a writer. He has a bunch of novels that he's written about zombies, fantasy novels, and he also has 2 podcasts, Nación Combi, which is about Peruvian current affairs, and Marginal, which is about economy. And also, Alex, he just saw the picture of the Grease collection that we got you for Christmas, and
yes,
he thought, like many others, that Grease Live was Grease 3.
Oh
and
my
when
God.
I said it was just a live performance, and I said that I thought that live performance was better than the Grease movie, he said, agree to disagree. So he's on your team.
Good. We need all the help we can get, you know?
Yes.
All right. Be sure to head over to latenightgrin.com for any and all pro wrestling needs. Pro wrestling news, pro wrestling podcasts, live streams. They also, every once in a while, will cover movies as well. There is a lot going on in the world of professional wrestling right now. And Joe, Rob, my buddy Matt, Oracle, all the boys over there, they got what you need. And who has what we need is the skills for social media. I didn't even plan that segue, but that is Zoe Perez, who helps out with our social media game. She's our social media guru, our social media czar. If you haven't already, facebook.com/Contrarian Prime, youtube.com/@Contrarian Prime, @Contrarian Prime on Instagram. Zoe really helps curate and put together a good-looking feed for our social media followers. So, Zoe, we appreciate the work that you do and continue to do for us. And as always, we appreciate you, our listening public, for tuning in to yet another episode of The Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong, and we will catch you next time.